Bob, you do VC for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Can you just tell me a little bit about what you do day to day, how venture capital works in the nonprofit sector?
It's a little different than it is in the for-profit rate of return investing space, but functionally what we're trying to do is to get entrepreneurs and companies focused on the problems we're trying to address. So the market works pretty effectively for niche oncology or orphan diseases because there are clearly profits to be made in them. But in a lot of the diseases where we're working, be it sub-Saharan Africa, neglected infectious diseases, malaria, dengue, tuberculosis, the market doesn't work so well. So what we're trying to do is invest in technologies, technologies that are applicable to that. Often it's appropriate to do it as a grant and a donation, but where creating a company makes sense, and there may be overlap. It may be a discovery technology that has overlap in cancer or neurology, but also has discovery capabilities in some of the things we're trying to solve. We'll co-invest with others to try and push those companies forward.
Keeping all those factors in mind, how do you go about choosing a company to invest in? Is it more focused on the diseases that the foundation focuses on, or is it just exciting discoveries that you want in on?
So it's a little bit of both. I think there are 3 or 4 things that need to come together to make a company. There are a lot of ideas out there. They may be products, they may be projects, but they're not really companies. And I think most of what the Gates Foundation will do will continue to be grant-oriented and continue to be working with academic institutions, nonprofit, the UN, Foundation, UN, other groups like that. And we, obviously as a group, we don't really do anything. We partner. We have capable partners that do things. And so to that end, that works a lot like a venture capital firm. And what we're trying to do is to find the right teams to invest in, the right technologies to invest in, and bring together those things to create products that will get into patients.
Do you have any companies that you've invested in recently or partnerships that you're really excited about that you think are going to go particularly far?
So there are a few. We've done a Affinivax with Boston Children's Hospital, which is a new vaccine technology out of Rick Malley's lab at Children's Hospital. We're involved in Genosha, which is a vaccine company. We're involved in Atreca, which is a company out in the Bay Area working on elucidating the immune response. And that's a good example of something that's applicable to both cancer, and we've talked a lot today about immunotherapy and cancer, but it's also going to be very applicable to diseases like HIV, tuberculosis, malaria, dengue, others.
You've mentioned several diseases that are pretty prevalent in parts of Africa right now, and I know the Gates Foundation has donated a whole bunch lately to the efforts to fight Ebola. How have you been involved in that at all?
It's not really a venture capital operation with regard to Ebola. Ebola, obviously a virus infectious, this is something that's been on the radar since 1976 or so, but I think they've been more concerned with the recent outbreak that it becomes endemic and really limiting the scope of that. Certainly the Gates Foundation has been involved in a catalytic way, both in an emergency response mode and then further to that by trying to support some of the other technologies, other companies, other academic programs that are involved in diagnostics, drugs, and vaccines for the virus.
Gates Foundation seems to focus more on long-term issues rather than acute.
Well, so we do, and the reason for that, and there are some themes across, we work in diseases, we work specifically on diseases that disproportionately affect the poor of the world. So they are largely in geographies that are Africa, Asia, sub-Saharan Africa specifically, and there are diseases that are killing. It may be something that people have heard about, like malaria or tuberculosis. There are other diseases like pneumonia that kill a whole bunch of kids, and there are treatments for pneumonia, but they're prohibitively expensive for the populations we're trying to serve. So there are a lot of different ways we approach it, and there are a lot of different long-term programs, from polio to malaria, HIV, tuberculosis, all these diseases. And then we do some things in global development, which include financial services for the poor, and then we do some things in US education.
For specifically again, the VC end, how does a company go from, what's that whole process like?
So I would say the most important thing about venture is that it's not sitting back waiting for people to send in ideas and proposals. And that's not a negative on that, but I don't think that works very well in the venture industry. And I think the scarce commodity in the venture industry is talented management teams. And so I think figuring out the incentive systems that get talented management teams to think of these as problems that are addressable. It's very obvious if you develop a drug for the United States for hepatitis C that there's a big market for it, cancer. There's not an obviously plowed path in a lot of these infectious diseases. And I think we've seen that in the, it's a coin-operated world. Companies are going to go after diseases where they can make money. That makes a lot of sense. But where we can encourage different technologies to be applied to the things we're trying to work on, I think there's a great synergy there.
So that's basically the difference between you and just a grant.
So I think the grant side of things is, grants work very effectively, and it tends to be the way NIH, the way academia has worked over a long period of time, and we do participate in that, and indeed that's the vast amount of what we do at the foundation. But I think we were looking to have all the tools available for the foundation, and I've been at the foundation about 1.5 years. Previous to that was in the venture industry for about 17 years. And it's a pretty effective tool for catalyzing, getting great management teams focused on trying to solve problems. And I think we're trying to emulate that. We're trying to work with other venture capitalists, other pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies, and partner with them to get them focused on our problems.
So after 17 years in just the venture industry, have you noticed any huge differences, or is it more similar than you would have expected working at the foundation?
There are huge attributes the foundation has. They have a technical know-how. I'd say they're in a position to define the problems we're trying to solve that is better than anybody else. So that's a huge advantage. And I think most of venture capital is about defining a problem and figuring out the best way of going about solving that problem. So I think we've got that huge advantage. There are other complications, and I think they're just that shifting what is a large organization and just a small part of that to think about it from a proactive backing teams, getting behind teams, and then just the complications with charitable family foundations involving in something that amounts to a rate of return business traditionally, just makes it a more complicating factor.